A pleasant day. This is Arzal Kyle Magnabihan, a group leader of Masculinity. So today I am discussing about men and gender studies. So men and gender studies. When asking various male friends what they want to see in a book on gender, the topic of maleness brought up. A book on women should include men well, said of one friend. Another shared that gender equality is yet to be proven beneficial. This friend is a straight male who could not see what gender equality had to do with him. Another said that talks on gender trended to center around women only never include men in discussion. Hence, he felt gender equality is a self-defeating concept. At first, these responses incited indignation. How could gender equality be seen as anything but beneficial both women and men? Did men truly empathy or a capacity to care for women? Similarly, the idea of centering the discussion of men seemed selfish. Is it not enough that men had a privileged position throughout history? Would discussing men's issues just another way of focusing men back to the limelight in a book that was supposed to be about women's? Nonetheless, reflecting on this issue further, the feminist indignation gave way to understanding. After all, it is necessary to have both genders pushing for gender equality to have a truly inclusive society. So, straight means that these men are attracted to people from opposite gender, such as women. Another one is cisgender, means that these men see themselves as men and often ascribe to themselves the role of the masculine self as dictated by society. And now, let us proceed to the beginning of masculinity. So, Carol Gilligan, an American psychologist known her study as women, ways learning, noted that women's socialized roles as caregivers tasked them with the responsibility of caring for young children. Girls who see an older woman doing a certain task will associate the gender with that task. Women, then, are trained from childhood to be caring and nurtured. More traditional models of the household have the men working solely outside of their homes, make them absent during a child's early years. This scene leaves young boys with no male model to learn from. The presence of female and absence of the male lead to boys learning masculinity through dissociation from their mothers. There is a conscious attempt to separate themselves from what they see as women's tasks. Men's ways of knowing are then more distant. Boys, and then later young men, learn masculinity than what they see on media and interaction in their schools. The lack of empathy of men may be rooted in the fact that they are actually socialized to be unlike women who must have empathy to raise children. So let's proceed to what makes a man a man. One can say that man is strong, but the degree of strength one day have depends on age, biology, and physical ability. Similarly, people may have different kinds of strength, from physical to emotional and even mental. Is a man less of a man because he is physically weaker than his wife? Or because he earns less than his female counterpart? Manhood is that one described through the adjectives tough, brave, strong, but whose definition is often continuously evolving. So, there have 4 rules of American masculinity. According to Michael Kimmel, number 1 is no sissy stuff. Masculinity is based on the relentless repudiation of feminine. Masculinity is never being a sissy. Number 2 is be a big wheel. We measured masculinity by the size of your paycheck, wealth, power, and status are all makers of masculinity. As a US bumper sticker put it, he who has the most toys when he dies wins. Number 3 is be a sturdy oak. What makes a man is that he reliable in a crisis. And what makes him rely in crisis is that he resembles an inanimate object like a rock, a pillar, a tree. So number 4 is give him a hell. Exude an aura of daring and aggressions. Take risk, live life on the edge, and go for it. While these factors may have changed, some nearly are true until today but in different forms. Joseph and Jennifer Bosson, two psychologists who study manhood, added that there are various forms of masculinities. Although, at given time, only one masculinity dominates, the Jordan heresy above all femininities and other masculinities. This is known as the hegemonic masculinity.
And male entitlement. When people think of gender, they readily think of the female or the LGBTs and rarely the male. When are viewed as the masculine generic, largely the reason why gender studies often only bring women to mind. Privilege has made a man gender invisible to man's gender. It is not important or essential to his being, as there are no societal barriers that hinder him from accessing goods because of his gender. However, gender is in fact something that greatly influences a man's life. The lack of recognition that men are gendered beings has been excluded men from conversations on gender. After all, masculinity was defined mostly by women and how they see and experience masculinity. This lack of recognition has made movement, the LGBT, and other fights for gender equality a fight that is solely a non-straight, non-male concern. This view was very different from how men saw themselves. Men do not know that they are to be included in this discourse since they are not considered as gender beings. Men may see themselves as weak despite the fact that numerous privileges are offered to them at work, in school, and while growing up. Gender movements mostly speak about of men and their privilege, yet men are not aware of it because of the damaging idea of manhood that society forces on men. Even those in power may be constrained by gender. Furthermore, men may feel the need to prove their manhood through violence, addiction, and oppressing non-dominant group. Michael Kimmel, in his address in 2001 International Women's Day seminar, had this to say about men and gender equality. I believe that the reason that the movement for women's equality remains only a partial victory has to do with men. In every arena in politics, military, workplace, professions, in education, the single greatest obstacle to women equality is the behavior and attitude of men. Adds that it is necessary to change the attitude of men toward gender equality to show them that it is also beneficial to them as men to be allies for gender equality. After all, it takes both gender cooperation to change a sexist culture. Women had seen radical changes concerning how society treats their gender, from school and workplace inclusion to policies that fight for their reproductive rights. Men's rights have remained the same. There has been little to no changes in their experience to work or sexuality. Men have no way to adjust to their changing gender role, precisely because they do not see themselves as gender being. Perhaps an end to traditionally masculinity, given its harmful nature, could be a big step in the direction of global equality rights. Men's gender identity being rooted in their disassociation with women may be viewed as the cause for men's gender confusion, unlike women who have been afforded the same opportunities for gender equality. Unexpectedly, what men have used to define their masculinity has taken over their masculine role. Masculinities were constructed in a way that pressured Filipino men to be more manly and not to exhibit female characteristics. Numerous forms of masculines are actually present in literature about Filipino culture throughout the story. They have evolved from the effeminate babaylan and spirit possessed warrior to the macho posturing man, as today as is simplified by basketball players, hunk actors, and business tycoons. Masculinity has a lot of faces because its definition continues to change. For instance, the traditional role of man in the family is being redefined as women go abroad, leaving men or other women to care for their children. Thus, it must be noted that the gendered character of men is not absolutely defined. Men define themselves and the society defines men. Their self-realization should be creative and not destructive for both themselves and the people they dwell with. Thus, the society must constantly study how masculinity is shaped to further the understanding of gender culture and gender interactions. The path toward gender equality is one that sees all person gender beings. It does not help to believe that gender is defined essentially by nature. Masculinity, as much as femininity, is a human project. It is shared pursuit of people who seek to engage with each other creatively and lovingly for the realization of their embodiment and their desire to find intimacy. Understanding how this construct was realized and defined will help individuals appreciate the projected character, or gender and becoming better person who love others and can care for others, and so we inquire ourselves how we define our gender. What are the possible reasons and motive for this particular construction? And finally, assess if this construction helps or harms self-realization and the flourishing of